just want to talk about why family history is so important. Because I just feel like there's not many people out there doing it as much as there should be. And everyone should really know what their family history is. Most of you know, probably from reading things on my page or my website, but I didn't know who my dad's side of the family was when I was young. And then when I moved in with him, when I was just before I turned 10, I didn't really know my mum's side of the family because I was too young to ask the questions when I was living with her. So I started getting into my family history once I was about 12 or 13. I started asking questions. When I was 15, I found my mum's side of the family again, and I started asking more and more questions, and eventually it became a family tree. Now I got into it because I obviously didn't know who family were, but once I started doing it, I found it was really healing. Creating these connections with ancestors that I didn't even know. Say hi if you're there, or pop a hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. But creating a connection with an ancestor that I didn't know, it just gives you this feeling and a sense of belonging and knowing who you really are, like a core identity. And I wanted to talk more about why we should be sharing our stories now. And it's because our descendants in 100 or 200, however many years' time, are going to be looking back for their ancestors, and they're going to find a lot, but there's going to be lots of things that they don't find. So obviously now we can go back and we can look for our ancestors, and we can find their birth records, their marriage records, death records. We can find obituaries, we can find newspaper clippings, we can find court records, gravestones, criminal records. We can find war history, and their war records. There's so much we can find, our censuses and electorals. And one thing that really, really frustrates me when I hear that people don't vote or don't fill out census forms correctly. And I'll tell you why. Because it's not just a form for the government, which is usually the reason I keep hearing is I don't want the government to know, I don't want so-and-so to find out, or whatever the reason is. But our descendants in 100, 200, 300 years' time are going to be looking back, and this is the information that they're going to be receiving. So if you're lying on forms, they're going to be given the wrong information. So we need to start telling, hey Crystal, I'm just talking about like things that piss me off, and why it's so important that we start telling our story, and why our descendants can find the information and find the correct information. We've got electoral rolls and we've got census rolls, census forms, and people are lying on them. I know when my family health record came out, there was so much controversy around that, and it really frustrated me, because not only is it a record that your doctor can pass on to your next doctor or your specialist or whatever, but it's a record that our descendants are going to be looking at in however many years' time, because maybe they got into their family history because they want to know about their medical history and what their ancestors had and what genes and what possible issues that they might have medically. So opting out of these things and lying on forms and not doing what we should be doing, essentially, it's not right. Like, you're depriving your descendants of finding out the correct information or any information. They're gonna, break the silence, exactly. So they're gonna be able to find our birth, marriage, death records, probably like all the records that we've got at the moment, and probably more, because we're gonna have things like Facebook and Instagram. These things they're gonna be out there. A lot of people don't realize, but there's actually, we have a thing called Pandora, which is a search function. You can go look for old websites that no longer exist, and you can scroll through the websites like they're still around. And our descendants are going to be able to do that, whether it's a business page that you have, or a website page that you have, or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. They're going to be able to see these things. And seeing things like you're playing Farmville, or photos that aren't yours, that you're just sharing, and it's just crap. You know, when you look at your newsfeed and it's just full of crap, that's what your descendants are going to be seeing. So we need to start sharing our stories, start sharing our photos, start sharing us, start telling us our story. And whether that's, if you don't want to take photos, that's fine. Go check out Paula Ivy, because she'll teach you how and why you should. But if you don't want to take photos, then tell your story, whether it's writing a book or make a website, or just write it out in a photo album and stick some photos in and give it to your kids. Just leave something about you that's more than just a birth, death, marriage record. Pass down information about your beliefs, your fears, your likes and dislikes, all these things that we can't find on forms. We need to be sharing more of that so that our descendants can know. Like, I look back at my family tree now, and I've got descendants I have no photos of. Absolutely none. And most of them, I wouldn't know what they liked and disliked unless they signed a petition. There's so much information out there that we can be keeping a record of and passing it down, but we're not. We need to break the silence. We need to stop. We need to start sharing and being more open. Just in general, make it known what it is that you believe in. Whether, if you don't go to church, why don't you go to church? Does anybody actually know? Is it just because you don't want to go on a Sunday and maybe it's boring? Maybe you don't believe in God. Whatever it is, someone needs to know. It needs to be passed down. We need to be passing down all these little things that every day is just insignificant crap, really. But is it? Actually allow people to get to know you. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Let people know who you are so that your descendants can look back and know who you are. Because, like I said at the beginning of this, it's a healing process. They might not be getting into it for the healing, but once they start, they're going to realize that it's healing. So if you're not doing your family history, you should be doing it, because you're going to heal crap that you don't even know what's inside. There's things inside us from our ancestors that we don't even know about. Beliefs, fears. I have absolutely no idea of my family. Yeah, so start doing it. You're in genealogy school. Come on. Chop, chop. No. There's lots of things that we can be learning. There's little things. Just start. Once you start, usually you won't be able to stop. Oh, sorry, I got a bit of sun glare there. But you won't be able to stop. So, well, you will. But once you get going, it's like you can't, like, you just want to know more. Well, this is what it was for me. And I know a lot of people that I have spoken to about their family history say the same things. You just want to know more. You want to know what they were like as a person. You know, were they a war hero? Well, were they a criminal? If they were a criminal, why? What happened that was so bad in their life that made them become that way? And finding out these little bits of information about our ancestors helps us to realize the things, the beliefs that we have, or the fears that we have, and why we have them. I read an article once, and it was talking about how, I think it was about DNA and how the genes get passed down. But it mentioned things that I didn't even know were a thing, like when you get your 6-year-old molars, it actually takes an imprint of where you are at the time. I haven't actually looked into it to how that happens. But if you, say, were born in America and then you came to Australia and got your 6-year-old molars here in Australia, your genes will be able to tell that. Yeah, catch up. There's lots of content. If you're not in genealogy school, jump on over to everybranchandtwig.com/genealogy school and sign up. It's a 12-week course that we're running at the moment, and it's all about how to find these records that I'm talking about, how to find them, where to find them, tips and tricks on how to do it, that type of thing. So jump on over, have a look. So not only are our teeth taking an imprint of where we are at the time, but our bones keep a record of how much air and how much oxygen, I should say, how much oxygen and how much water we are intaking, what our intake is. So our body is taking in our environment and keeping a record of it. So our genes change depending on our environment, and then that gets passed down. So we have, so just say like a child goes through trauma, have a very traumatic childhood, their environment is different, their genes create, I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but from what I get, they create a different gene to cope with what's going on at the time. And then that is obviously passed down to the next generation. Your genes change based on the external. Yeah, exactly. So it gets passed down to the next person and the next person and the next person. And obviously each ancestor's environment is different, and it's getting passed down. So keeping a record of the things like fears and beliefs and likes and dislikes, or what was happening in your childhood, or what was happening when you were a teenager, or what happened at work, like the little things, like the stories, like bullying, trauma, things that really affected you, meant not only just like externally, but like mentally as well. If it's affected you mentally or psychologically, I don't know the word. If it's affecting you that way, then it needs to be told. Like, why? What happened? What made your genes change to what it is, and what is it that you're passing down? I hope this all makes sense. But yeah, so I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to say today. It was just that stop lying, stop not filling out forms, stop not recording your stories, and start telling your story. Share your story. Fill your Facebook and your Instagram with you. Fill it with stories of you, and pass it down. Leave a legacy for your children and your children's children, and so that, in 1,000 years' time, these descendants can look back and know you. I will speak to you guys soon. Bye.